Following the release of Q1 2017 GDP data confirming an economic recession, the Minister of Finance has engaged with various stakeholders to map a way forward. It is acknowledged that failure to set the economy on a higher and more sustainable growth path will disadvantage a large portion of our population and undermine efforts rapidly to address unemployment, inequality, and poverty. In our engagements with various stakeholders, several major concerns were raised, including continued slow growth, the recession and the potential impact to the fiscal framework, rising government debt, the state of state-owned companies and risks to contingent liabilities, and policy uncertainty and low business and consumer confidence. Government has been deeply engaged with the issue of low economic growth and the recession, analyzing its impact on social welfare and considering an appropriate response. There have since been several engagements in Cabinet and amongst the economic cluster ministers to craft an appropriate government response. The President hosted a meeting of several ministers on the 28th of June 2017. At the meeting, the President stressed the urgency of a coordinated response, and to this end, an agreement was reached on implementation timelines for key structural reforms related to the 9-point plan. These would support both business and consumer confidence, thereby laying the foundation for an economic recovery. Details of the key areas are listed in the table attached, which I will refer later. These interventions are the beginning of a response program that will be unpacked in the medium-term budget policy statement and the 2018 budget. The President will monitor and coordinate implementation to ensure the timelines are met. The Minister of Finance has also committed to exploring an economic support package within existing fiscal resources. The support package will be designed to enhance the 9-point plan structural reform program and will depend on the government's ability to find resources through reprioritization from areas of slack towards areas with higher potential for growth and employment. Any support package will be dependent on progress in implementing these interventions. At the medium-term budget policy statement, we will be able to more comprehensively speak to our economic outlook and growth prospects. It is critical that we go into the MTBPS having demonstrated progress in unlocking growth. We've made progress on resolving electricity constraints and improving labor relations and the ease of doing business. The global economy presents opportunities, including growth in some of our major trading partners, a recovery in commodity prices, and strong capital inflows into emerging markets. Let's take advantage of these opportunities. We also call upon all social partners to engage proactively on practical initiatives to bring about inclusive growth and economic transformation. We need all our collective leadership, initiative, imagination, and ingenuity. Achieving the NDP's Vision 2030 requires all of us to find common cause for the sake of all South Africans. Now, there are 13 action points that we announce in this regard. As I have indicated earlier, to support both business and consumer confidence and lay the foundation for an economic recovery. To start with fiscal policy. Now, what we have done is to identify these action points, develop action items under each one of them in detail, attach alongside each action item a responsible minister and timelines by which this must have been delivered. Starting with fiscal policy, we must finalize a sustainable wage agreement, and the responsible minister is the Minister for the Public Service and Administration. That must happen by February 2018. You will all know that this is the year for public sector wage negotiations. The second action item is finalizing the infrastructure budget facility, about which I spoke during our budget vote in May this year. That will be done by the Minister of Finance by October 2017. In many instances, when I refer to October 2017, you must keep in mind that I'm referring to things that will be elaborated in the medium-term budget policy statement. Number 2, financial sector and tax policy. There are 4 action steps to be taken there. Convene the Financial Sector Summit to quantify transformation targets, including for low-income housing and transformational agriculture, by the Minister of Finance. Timeline is December 2017. Now, you will get copies of these, so I'm sure you don't have to scribble copiously. Second action item is bringing down banking costs by implementing the Twin Peaks legislation by the Minister of Finance. Timeline is February 2018. Work with DTI on targeted debt relief for the most vulnerable, for example, in cases of reckless lending. That is by the Minister of Finance. The timeline is February 2018. And introducing microinsurance framework and review cooperatives bank framework by the Minister of Finance, February 2018. Number 3, leveraging public procurement. There are 3 action items under that. Implement the amended PPFA regulations by the Minister of Finance, July 2017. That's been done. Finalize the public procurement bill by the Minister of Finance. We expect that to be done by March 2018. The bill will now be released for public comment, and it will go through the necessary processes, taken to Parliament, to the Standing Committee on Finance, be discussed, taken to Parliament for the National Assembly for debate, second reading debate. We hope that will be done by March 2018. And thirdly, finalize complementary government fund. A complementary government fund aimed at financing SMMEs in startup phase. That is by the Minister of Small Business and Cooperatives Development. We expect that to be done by February 2018. Number 4, recapitalization of state-owned enterprises and government guarantees. There are 5 action items under that. 5.1, continue engagements on framework for the disposal of non-core assets by the Minister of Finance. Timeline is March 2018. Conduct a detailed audit of non-strategic assets of state-owned enterprises aimed at strengthening the SOE balance sheet by the Minister of Finance by March 2018. finalize recapitalization of SAA and the South African Post Office by the Minister of Finance, August 2017. Reduce the issuance of government guarantees, especially for operational reasons. That is the responsibility of Cabinet by October 2017. You will remember in this regard that I have raised concerns that the government guarantees, we need to strategically use them, utilize them to support infrastructure investments and capital expansion rather than to finance operations and losses and inefficiencies in the SOEs. And we must determine the consequences of SOE non-adherence to the guarantee conditions. That is the responsibility of government by October 2017. Number 5, broader SOE reforms. There are 6 action items arising under that heading. We must implement private sector participation framework by March 2018, that's the Minister of Finance. Implement the remuneration framework, the Minister of Public Enterprises, by March 2018. Finalize the board appointment framework by the Minister of Public Service and Administration by March 2018. This is quite important to establish standardization across the SOE environment, regardless of which department is a shareholder department, to ensure that we all have a common and standard understanding of the procedures for appointments of boards, as well as the term of office of board members, the standards we expect of board members, how they get appointed, how they get evaluated and assessed. We must table the draft shareholder management bill. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Public Enterprises. We expect that to be concluded by March 2018. The bill has been finalized for public comment, and it will soon be released for public comment. And then after that, it will go back to Cabinet for final approval in order to be referred to the National Assembly. Then we must implement a framework for the determination and costing of developmental mandates of state-owned enterprises. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by March 2018. And we must approve the terms of reference for implementation of the Remuneration Standards Oversight Committee. That is the responsibility of Cabinet by September 2017. Action 6, private sector participation framework. We must engage other departments on PSP framework by the Minister of Finance, July 2017. We must provide broader guidance on sectors or asset classes for public sector participation and decide whether sector-specific PSP frameworks are needed. That's the responsibility of all shareholder ministries by October 2017. We must present potential projects for PSP to line departments, technical task team and interministerial committee. That is by all state-owned enterprises by November 2017. We must approve PSP projects as outlined in the governance framework proposed in the PSP framework. That is again the responsibility of all shareholder ministers, must be done by March 2018. And we must include PSP projects in shareholder compacts and corporate plan for subsequent implementation. That is the responsibility of all shareholder ministers by March 2018. Action 7, costing developmental mandates. We must consult other SOEs on costing of developmental mandates. That's the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by August 2017. We must implement mechanisms to effect outcomes through corporate plans. That is by the Minister of Finance, timeline August 2017. We must roll out the template for inclusion in the 2018 corporate plans. The Minister of Finance, September 2017. And monitor implementation through quarterly reports and annual reports and corporate plans. Minister of Finance, March 2018. Action 8, energy. We must approach NERSA regarding Eskom hardships. That will be the responsibility of Eskom itself. Timeline is July 2017. We must develop the case for Eskom soft support until tariff adjustment in 2018 and submit to Treasury and the Eskom board. That is the responsibility of Eskom. Timeline is July 2017. We must finalize the lowest cost integrated energy plan and integrated resource plan, taking into account extensive comments received during public consultation. That is by the Minister of Energy. The timeline is February 2018. Review the pace and scale of rollout under the circumstances of Eskom hardships and overcapacity up to 2021. That is the Minister of Energy. Timeline is August 2017. And we must review the level of participation by black industrialists and develop a strategy to increase it. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Energy. Timeline is August 2017. Action 9, SAA. We must finalize the appointment of the new CEO. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance by July 2017. We must finalize and implement the 5-year turnaround strategy. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. The timeline is December 2019. We must negotiate with lenders to extend debt to longer term. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. Timeline is October 2017. Action 10. Telecommunications. There are 5 action items under that. Number 1 is to conduct a high-level study on the wholesale open access network spectrum needs, with a view to license the remainder to the industry. That is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications and Public and Postal Services. Timeline is August 2017. We must issue a policy directive mandating ICASA to commence the licensing process. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. Timeline is December 2017. We must complete the spectrum licensing process. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. Timeline is December 2018. We must direct the Competition Commission to investigate the data prices. That's the responsibility of the Ministers of Telecommunications and Economic Development. The timeline is July 2017. And we must commence the rollout of Phase 1 of South Africa Connect broadband program. It is the responsibility of the Minister of Telecommunications. The timeline is August 2017. Action 11. Post-bank licensing. We must implement amendments of the enabling we must amend the enabling legislation for the licensing of the post-bank. It is the responsibility of both the Ministers of Telecommunications and the Minister of Finance. Timeline is December 2017. Action 12, Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act Amendment Bill. We must finalize the MPRDA Amendment Bill in a manner that reflects the inputs of civil society, labor and industry solicited through the public consultation process. That is by the Minister of Mineral Resources. The timeline is December 2017. Action 13, Broad-Based Socio-Economic Empowerment Charter for the South African Mining and Minerals Industry. You will know that the charter has been gazetted by the Minister of Mineral Resources. And what we say is that there must be further engagements with civil society, labor and industry. Action 14, Regulation of Land Holdings Bill. We must table regulations, the regulation of Land Holdings Bill in Parliament after processing by a multidisciplinary ministerial think tank, the NJSC and the NETLEC. It's the responsibility of the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform. The timeline is 2017. It is important in relation to these 14 action points. I earlier made a mistake and said there are 13. In relation to these 14 action points, that we need to emphasize the principle of leadership, united action. During these difficult economic times, we need the unity in action and unity in purpose of all the relevant role players and leadership, particularly emanating from government, for us to be able to restore confidence in the economy and restore growth. All of these items that we have announced are drawn from the 9-point plan, and whilst they do not in themselves constitute an overarching economic recovery plan, they constitute, however, an important intervention to restore confidence, to demonstrate action, and that we have an action plan by which we as government are prepared to be held responsible. All of the ministers who have been mentioned in relation to this action plan understand the responsibility we jointly share to comply with our action plans and implement the action items, the details of which will, as you notice, be availed as the time goes on, so that we provide the necessary confidence and certainty to investors and the markets. The President will continue to play a coordinating role with regard to the implementation of these action plans. And as you know, it is important to re-emphasize that at the very heart of what we are doing in this regard is to focus on growth and transformation. And so the issues of transformation are critical to the steps we are going to take and the implementation of all these action plans. The medium-term budget policy statement will elaborate and give flesh and detail to some of these items. And the different sector departments will equally do so at the relevant times. We will be continuing to engage with business on this action plan so that they understand the steps we are taking in order to reignite growth to the economy. The National Treasury remains singularly focused on these important task at hand. Thank you very much.